Lena had never known kindness beneath the roof of her father's house. Since the day her mother passed and her father remarried, the old timbered home by the woods had turned cold. Her stepmother, the widow Brenna, ruled it with sharp words and a cruel hand. Her father, once strong and full of laughter, had grown quiet and thin under Brenna's watchful eye, until even he wasted away to an early grave, leaving Lena alone with the woman who loathed her. For years Lena endured Brenna's commands: fetch the wood, scrub the floors, tend the goats, wash the foulest linens. Each day was a quiet battle of will, each night a thin sleep broken by hunger or the creak of Brenna's footsteps pacing above. There were whispers in the village of Brenna's strange habits. Her long absences into the woods, the bitter-smelling herbs that hung from the rafters, the way animals seemed to grow still and silent in her presence. But none dared speak openly. And Lena, with no one to defend her, had learned silence as her shield. Then one bitter autumn morning all changed. Lena had risen before dawn as always, to stoke the fire and draw water from the well. The air was damp with mist, the sky gray and heavy. She moved quietly through the house, careful not to wake her stepmother, but when the morning light finally crept through the shutters, Brenna did not stir. The old woman's chamber remained silent long past the usual hour when her sharp voice would pierce the air with orders. At first Lena dared hope. But as the shadows lengthened, dread crept in. Finally, with trembling fingers she pushed open the chamber door. There, upon the high bed hung with moth-eaten drapes, Brenna lay still. Her eyes were shut, lips pale, breath absent. The house, once oppressive with her presence, now seemed hollow. The news spread swiftly. The neighbors came, peering with morbid curiosity. The elders arrived, muttering prayers and examining the body. Gone, they declared, nodding. The old witch is gone. Lena stood in the corner, heart pounding. She should have felt relief, but something in the air prickled at her skin. She could not look away from Brenna's face, from the faint color that clung too stubbornly to her cheeks. By village custom, it fell to the family to prepare the dead. And though Lena protested, claiming she was but a servant, not kin, the elders would not relent. There is no one else, they said. It is your duty. See it done. And so, as the house emptied and the sun dipped low, Lena found herself alone once more in the dim chamber. The door shut behind her with a dull thud. The air smelled of dried herbs and something else, something cloying and sour. The basin of water waited, cold as stone. The linens were laid out. With trembling hands Lena approached the bed. She paused. The body lay too still, too whole. Brenna's hands were folded across her chest, her fingers stiff but not gray. A faint warmth seemed to rise from the skin. Her heart thudded painfully. She bent closer, her breath held. The chest, there beneath the thin shift, rose. Faintly, slowly. A single shallow breath. Lena staggered back, the basin tipping, water splashing across the floor. No, it was a trick of the light. A spasm. The old woman was dead, she must be. Yet her chest rose again, another weak, almost imperceptible breath. Panic clawed at Lena's throat. She fled the chamber, calling to the old widow Merrick in the lane. Breathless she tried to explain, to plead. But Merrick only shook her head. Girl, grief can cloud the mind. The body twitches as the spirit leaves. That is all. No, she breathed still. I saw, Lena cried. But the old woman scowled. Enough. The rites must be done. Do not dishonor the dead with foolish tales. And so, with no help and no one to believe her, Lena returned to the darkened room. The shutters were closed now. The air pressed thick upon her. The body lay waiting. For hours Lena worked with shaking hands. She washed Brenna's thin arms, her bony legs, flinching at the unnatural warmth beneath the cold cloth. The lips, though pale, seemed soft. The eyes twitched faintly beneath their lids. And through it all, the shallow breaths continued, slow, steady, too regular to dismiss. By the time darkness fell and the house creaked with night sounds, Lena's terror had turned to grim resolve. She would not flee, not now. There was something wrong, something deeply wrong. And though her heart trembled, she would see it through. With the final cloth folded, she sat in the corner, eyes locked on the still figure. The candle guttered low. Then in the stillness, the faintest sound reached her ears, dry and rasping. A whisper. Her blood turned cold. The corpse, her stepmother, was not dead. And Lena was trapped. Lena barely slept that night. She remained curled in the corner of the chamber, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, her wide eyes fixed on the bed. The single candle burned low, casting long, unsteady shadows on the cracked walls. The warmth of the corpse had not faded. Again and again, Lena watched the thin shift rise and fall in slow, faint breaths. She had heard it, unmistakable, that dry, rasping whisper that had slipped from her stepmother's unmoving lips. The sound still rang in her ears, though the words, if there had been any, were too faint to understand. Now, silence once more filled the room, heavy as stone. At first light, Lena fled the house. The morning air was cold and damp, but she cared little. Her heart pounded as she hurried down the muddy lane, skirts clutched in her hands. She must tell someone. Someone must listen. She stopped first at Widow Marek's, pounding on the weathered door until it creaked open. "Marek, please," Lena gasped. "It's not right. Brenna, she still breathes. The body." The old woman frowned deeply. "You again, child? You are overtired. The rites weigh heavy on the heart. It's not uncommon to imagine such things." Lena shook her head fiercely. "No, it's real. I sat with her all night. The breath is there, faint but steady." She whispered. Widow Marek crossed her arms. "Grief and shadows. Your mind plays tricks. Go home and rest." Frustration burned in Lena's chest, but she forced herself onward. Others must listen. She ran to the baker's wife, to the butcher's daughter, women who had once spoken kindly to her on market days. But each only frowned or shook their heads. "You poor thing," the baker's wife murmured. "You've been alone too long." The butcher's daughter scowled. "Or seeking attention. The witch is gone. Best leave her to the ground." It was the same everywhere. No one believed her. The villagers, already wary of Brenna's reputation, wanted no part in strange tales. The dead were to be mourned, not feared. And Lena, a mere stepdaughter, a servant in her own house, was hardly one to speak of curses. By mid-morning, Lena stood alone in the square, her breath ragged, her hope drained. No one would help. No one would come. Slowly, unwillingly, she returned to the house. The door creaked as she entered. The air within seemed thicker, heavier than before. The shutters remained closed, the single candle burned low upon the stand. Lena forced herself toward the chamber. She would not leave the body alone, no matter the fear gnawing at her belly. Inside, the figure upon the bed had not moved, yet still that faint warmth lingered. Still the thin chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Lena dragged a stool into the corner and sank onto it, arms wrapped around herself. If no one would believe her, then she would watch alone. Whatever was happening here, she would face it. The hours crept by. Outside, the autumn sun rose and fell behind thick clouds. Within the chamber, the shadows seemed never to lift. At dusk, Lena heard it again, a faint, rasping whisper barely more than the wind. Her breath caught. The sound had not come from beyond the walls. It had come from the bed. She rose slowly, each step an effort, and stood beside the corpse. Brenna's face remained still, eyes closed, lips parted slightly. But as Lena bent closer, a thin breath stirred against her cheek, followed by another whisper. Still no word she could understand, but undeniably a voice. Lena staggered back, heart racing. Her skin prickled with cold. She could not leave, not now, not while this thing still breathed. And so the vigil began. Night fell thick and heavy. The wind moaned through the eaves. Lena lit fresh candles, though their light seemed dim against the creeping gloom. The house groaned with old age, boards shifting beneath unseen weight. Lena sat unmoving, eyes locked on the figure upon the bed. As the hours deepened, the whispers grew stronger. At times she thought she heard her name, soft, drawn out, a breath upon the air. Leone. Her throat tightened. Fear clawed at her, yet still she watched. Then, nearer midnight, new sounds came, soft breathing, deeper now, accompanied by faint, irregular thuds, as though some hidden heart beat slow beneath the ribs. Lena clenched her hands until her nails bit skin. The room felt colder now, the candle flames wavering though no draft stirred. The air seemed to press inward, thick and suffocating. Time stretched thin. Minutes felt like hours. Once in the dark, the bed creaked softly, as if weight had shifted, unseen. Lena nearly bolted. But resolve held her fast. If this was some curse or spell, if some dark magic was at work, then she must witness it. She must endure. Dawn came at last, pale and gray. The whispers faded. The breathing slowed once more to that faint, shallow rhythm. Exhausted, Lena slumped forward, head upon her knees. No sleep claimed her, only a restless half-awareness haunted by the night's sounds. And so passed the first long night of whispers in the dark. But Lena knew, tonight would not be the last. The following day passed in a haze of dread and exhaustion. Lena scarcely ate, scarcely moved from the chamber. Every sound seemed sharper, every shadow longer. Her limbs felt leaden, her head thick with the fog of sleeplessness, but she would not allow herself to drift into true sleep. Something inside her whispered that to leave the corpse unguarded would invite greater danger. By midday, a knock startled her from her thoughts, a soft, hurried rap at the kitchen door. Lena hesitated, then rose warily, glancing once more at the bed before stepping into the hall. The knock came again, quicker this time. Drawing in a steadying breath, she unlatched the door and opened it a crack. There stood a hunched figure wrapped in a gray cloak, old Mags, the village healer. Her hair was white as bone, her skin weathered like old bark. In her eyes, though, burned a sharpness that time had not dulled. Mags had once been a friend to Lena's mother, though after her mother's passing, Brenna had forbidden the old woman from the house. They had scarcely spoken in years. "Mags?" Lena whispered, blinking. "Why?" "Hush, child," the healer rasped, slipping inside quickly. "Lock the door." Lena obeyed, barring the door behind them. Mags cast her sharp gaze about the dim house, her mouth set in a thin line. "I heard the talk," she said. "Your wild tale of a corpse that breathes. And more, things whispered last night, things the wind should not carry. You've done right to stay here." You believe me?" Lena stammered. Mags met her gaze. And more than that, I fear it may be worse than you know." Without waiting for reply, the old healer made her way toward the chamber. Lena hurried after her, heart pounding. The air within the room was heavier than ever. The candles burned low, their light barely pushing back the gloom. The figure upon the bed lay as before, still, pale, but the faint rise and fall of the chest remained, slow and unnatural. Mags approached with grim purpose, setting her basket upon the floor. She withdrew a bundle of dried herbs, a small dish of salt, and a worn amulet of iron and bone. "Tell me all," she commanded softly. "From the beginning." And so Lena did, her voice hushed but steady, recounting the morning she had found Brenna unmoving, the first signs of breath, the whispers in the night, the shifting weight upon the bed. Mags listened intently, her eyes narrowing. When Lena finished, the healer spoke in a low, grave tone. "There is dark magic at work here. Your stepmother was not merely a bitter woman, she dabbled where none should tread." Lena's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "I mean this is no sickness of the body," Mags said, "nor a simple restless spirit. I knew Brenna in years past. She sought knowledge, old, forbidden rites. She learned them from strangers in the woods, from old books best left unopened." Lena's hand shook. "But, she is dead. Isn't she?" Mags shook her head slowly. "Not fully. Not as she should be. She has trapped herself between life and death, caught in the snare of her own making. There are rites to draw power from the borderlands of spirit and flesh, but if done wrong, they leave the soul bound, unable to pass, unable to live." "Then what will happen?" Lena whispered. "She lingers now, her body unwilling to die, her spirit unwilling to leave." The healer's gaze darkened. "And you, child, you have been bound to it." Lena's breath caught. "Bound? How?" "By washing the body," Mags said. "In rites such as these, touch and care can forge a tether. The one who tends the corpse becomes linked to its state. If the binding completes, the trapped soul may seek escape into yours." Lena staggered back, her heart hammering. No, I didn't know." "Few would," Mags said gently. "But now you must understand, this is not an ordinary vigil. You face a great danger." Tears stung Lena's eyes, but she fought them back. "What can I do?" "For now watch. Guard. Do not abandon the body. And do not allow another to tend it. The bond is with you alone." Mags rose and began placing the herbs at the corners of the room, murmuring soft words beneath her breath. "I will return with what aid I can. There are old wards, old charms that may weaken the binding. But this is no simple thing to break." A faint, rasping breath rose from the bed, followed by another whispered sound. Mags stiffened, her fingers tightening around the iron amulet. "The voice grows stronger," she muttered. "The curse deepens with each passing night." She turned to Lena, her eyes fierce. "Be brave, child. You must endure. But know this, when the time comes, it will be you who must face what lies beneath. None can do it in your place." Lena swallowed hard, her throat tight with fear. But within her, a small flame of resolve sparked. "I will," she whispered. "I will face it." Mags placed a firm hand upon her shoulder. "Good. Then there is hope yet." With that, the old healer gathered her things and slipped away into the fading light, leaving Lena alone once more in the darkened house. The whispers soon returned, soft at first, then growing bolder. But Lena remained at her watch, heart steady, mind sharpened by newfound understanding. This was no trick of grief, no shadowed dream. It was a curse. And the battle for her soul had only just begun. The third night came heavier than the ones before. The air inside the house was dense, the shadows thick as oil. Outside, a bitter wind swept through the village, rattling shutters and howling through the narrow lanes, but no sound seemed to touch the heart of Brenna's home. It stood still as if sealed from the world. Lena had not left the house for 2 days now. Her skin was pale, her eyes ringed with exhaustion, but she forced herself to stay alert. Fear was her constant companion, close, cold, gnawing, but something deeper now moved beneath it, resolve. Mags's warning echoed in her mind. The bond was not yet complete. But time was running short. Before twilight, Mags had returned briefly, slipping through the back door unseen. The old healer had laid fresh wards around the room, bundles of yarrow and rowan, sprigs of thorn and salt circles on the floor. She'd pressed a small iron charm into Lena's palm. Keep this close, Mags had instructed. Iron holds the spirit at bay. But it will not stop what must come. The third night, that is when the dead truly stir. Lena had nodded grimly. I will not run. Good. Mags had squeezed her hand once. You have more strength than you know. And then, before darkness fell, she was gone. Now Lena sat alone once more in the chamber, a single lantern burning beside her. The iron charm lay cold in her lap. The corpse, Brenna, lay still upon the bed, her waxen face half swathed in shadow. The thin shift clung to her gaunt form, the faint rise and fall of her chest still steady, unnatural. The hours dragged by. The wind wailed outside. The floor creaked under unseen weight. Then near midnight, a sudden hush fell over the house. The wind ceased. The old timbers groaned, then grew silent. Even the flame of the lantern seemed to flicker slower, as if time itself had thickened. Lena sat forward, her breath shallow. A sound broke the stillness, a thin, sharp crack, like the snapping of brittle bone. Her gaze flew to the bed. Brenna's fingers twitched. Lena gripped the iron charm tighter, heart racing. The corpse's hands shifted again, then her head. Slowly, stiffly, as if dragged from some impossible weight, the neck turned upon the pillow. Then, impossibly, Brenna's eyelids fluttered. Lena's breath caught in her throat. A cold sweat broke across her skin. The lids parted, revealing clouded, milky eyes faintly gleaming in the half-light. And then, slow, rasping, came a breath drawn deeper than before. A voice followed, broken, unnatural, half-human, half-something else. Leone. The sound scraped the air like dry leaves against stone. Lena wanted to flee, every muscle screamed to run, but her feet would not move. Mags's warning echoed in her mind, you must face what lies beneath. The corpse's head turned further. The eyes, those pale dead eyes, locked onto her. Another breath, another word torn from a throat that should not speak. Bind, released, must end. Lena swallowed hard, forcing her voice through trembling lips. What are you? The mouth twisted, working as if through pain. Trapped, between, bound by, curse. The voice cracked, part human, part a hollow echo. Lena clutched the iron tighter. Who cursed you? Why? A long pause. The chest rose then fell. Own, doing, the voice rasped. Sought, power, took, wrong, path. A bitter, rattling breath escaped. Not, fully dead, not, alive. The eyes gleamed faintly. You, bound, through touch. Lena's throat tightened. What do you want from me? A low, pained moan followed. The words came slower now, as though torn from some deep place. Release, or, both, lost. A shiver ran through Lena. How can I release you? The corpse's lips parted in a ghastly grimace, almost a mockery of a smile. Greater danger than me? The words sent a chill deeper than any night wind. What danger? Lena demanded, voice cracking. A harsh breath wheezed from the chest. Opened, door, wrong, side, things, watching, waiting. Lena's blood ran cold. Then the voice, strained and breaking, whispered. Not alone any longer. The breath hitched, then stopped. The corpse stilled once more, eyelids fluttering closed. The room seemed to shudder, as though the walls themselves had exhaled. The lantern guttered low. Lena sat frozen, heart thundering. A curse. A binding. A greater danger still unseen. She could not leave. She could not stop. The third night had passed. But the battle had only begun. The dawn after the third night was gray and heavy with mist. The house sat in utter silence. No bird called, no distant rooster crowed. Even the wind that had howled the night before seemed to hold its breath. Lena sat slumped against the far wall of the chamber, her legs trembling with fatigue. Her face was pale, her eyes dark-circled. The whispered words of the corpse echoed endlessly in her mind: bound, through touch, release, or both, lost, open door, things, waiting. She did not know what greater danger lurked, only that it felt closer now, like a presence at her back. She forced herself to stand. Her knees wobbled beneath her. The iron charm in her palm had grown warm during the night, as though in silent warning. She needed Mags. If anyone could explain the terrible thing that was happening, it was the old healer. Lena moved through the dim house and unbarred the back door. The morning mist curled about her like smoke as she stepped outside. Her legs were weak, but urgency drove her on. By the time she reached Mags's cottage at the edge of the woods, her breath was ragged and her limbs ached. She pounded on the door with what strength remained. Moments later, the door creaked open and Mags peered out. One look at Lena's pale, stricken face and she ushered the girl quickly inside. "You saw it?" the old woman said grimly. "It spoke." Lena nodded, voice hoarse. "It opened its eyes. Spoke to me. It knows me." Mags drew her to a stool by the hearth and pressed a warm cup into her trembling hands. "Drink. You'll need your strength," the healer murmured. "Tell me everything." And Lena did, every word, every broken whisper, every shift of breath and eye. Mags listened, her expression darkening with each sentence. When Lena finally fell silent, Mags let out a long breath. "It is as I feared," she said. "The bond between you and the corpse grows stronger. The rite your stepmother used, though incomplete, has snared you in its weave." Lena gripped the cup tighter. "Because I washed the body." Mags said. "In old magic such as this, it is not death alone that binds. It is touch, act of care, ritual cleansing. The spirit, trapped between life and death, reaches for what warmth it can find. Through your hands, through your care, the tether was formed." Lena's heart sank. "What does it want from me?" Mags's eyes narrowed. "If the corpse fully awakens, it will not remain as Brenna once was. Her spirit is corrupted, twisted by her meddling. It will seek new life, to complete what was left unfinished. And the bond means it will draw from you. Your soul would be its path." Lena shuddered. "You mean, if it rises it will take me?" The old woman's gaze was grim. "Yes. Your life, your body, your spirit, it would all be consumed. And worse, the corruption might not stop with you. The thing she has opened, whatever darkness lies beyond, will slip further into this world." Lena's breath caught. The warnings of the corpse rang in her ears again. "Opened, door, wrong side, things, waiting." Her voice trembled. "Then what can I do?" Mags hesitated. "There are two paths. You can leave the house, flee. If you do, the bond will fray, but so will your life. The curse will seek you still, you will weaken, fade, perhaps die. Or—" She fixed Lena with a sharp look. "You can stay. Face the thing. Guard the corpse until the binding can be broken." Lena's mouth went dry. "How long would I have?" Mag shook her head. "That I do not know. The more it stirs, the faster the bond deepens. You may have days or only hours." Lena stared into the fire, her mind racing. To flee meant death, slow and inevitable. To stay meant facing the dark magic alone, without sleep, without hope of help. But then she remembered her mother's face, kind, warm, and her father's, dim now in memory but once full of laughter. They would not have run. They would have fought to the end. Her hands tightened on the cup. "I will stay." Mags nodded slowly. "Good. You have courage." She rose and fetched a small leather pouch. "Take this, more iron filings and herbs. Place them fresh each night. I will return with what more I can find. But hear me, child, do not leave the corpse alone. If the binding is allowed to deepen unchecked, there will be no breaking it." Lena stood, weariness banished by resolve. "I understand." Mags laid a hand upon her shoulder. "Then may your spirit hold strong." With that, Lena turned and stepped once more into the mist. By the time she reached the house, the light was already fading. The air within felt heavier than before. The corpse lay as she had left it, but now the breath came quicker, sharper. The skin seemed warmer beneath the shift. Lena barred the doors and windows, refreshed the salt lines and herbs, and sat once more at her vigil, iron charm in hand. She would not flee. She would not surrender. If this curse would take her, it would not do so without a fight. The hours of that fourth night crawled by in slow, suffocating silence. Lena sat motionless in the chair beside the corpse, her small frame tense, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. She could no longer tell if it was fear or sheer stubborn will that kept her awake, perhaps both. The iron charm bit cold into her palm, her only comfort as the corpse on the bed twitched and whispered in its unnatural sleep. The breathing had deepened again, still slow, still faint but undeniably stronger than before. Mags had been right, the bond was deepening. And Lena could feel it too, an icy pull in her chest, a weight behind her eyes, as if something unseen now connected her breath to that of her stepmother's corpse. Each time the figure rasped in a breath, some part of Lena's spirit seemed to flutter, fragile and thin. When the first light of dawn seeped through the shutters, gray and weak, Lena forced herself to her feet. Her body ached, her head swam, but she knew, she needed answers and soon. The warnings had been clear. Time was running out. With the house locked and warded, and her iron charm strung close about her neck, Lena stepped out into the fog-laden streets of the village. She moved swiftly, keeping her hood low. Though she had spoken to no one since the news of Brenna's death, she felt the villagers' glances upon her, furtive, wary. They had heard her tale by now, twisted through whispers. Some looked upon her with pity, others with suspicion. Let them talk, Lena thought bitterly. They had refused to believe her. Now she had no choice but to find the truth alone. Her first stop was Mags's cottage, but the healer had not yet returned from her foraging in the deeper woods. A young apprentice answered the door with a nervous shake of the head. No help there, not yet. Lena turned next toward the old records hall. Few ever visited the dusty stone building near the chapel, but she had heard Mags mention once that old rites and village histories were sometimes recorded there, scraps of lore copied by cautious hands, preserved where the churchmen could not see. The keeper of the hall, Master Arlen, was a sour-faced man with little love for Brenna's name. When Lena pressed him for records of dark rites or forest pacts, he frowned deeply. "You tread dangerous ground, girl," he warned. "Best forget such things." "I cannot," Lena whispered hoarsely. "Please. It is my life now." Perhaps it was the raw desperation in her voice, or perhaps the old man had known more than he'd ever let on. With a grumble, he relented and led her to the back stacks, high dusty shelves lined with brittle scrolls and rotting books. "There. Read if you dare," he muttered before leaving her alone among the shadows. Lena set to work, searching with trembling fingers. Hours passed, but at last she found it, an ancient parchment, marked with faded ink and strange symbols. Her heart pounded as she traced the text. It spoke of bindings between flesh and spirit, rites of stolen life, and worse, of bargains struck with spirits of the old forest, those that dwelled beyond mortal sight. The door once opened, cannot be easily shut. A pact. That was the root of it. Lena's stepmother had sought power beyond her means and in her arrogance had trapped herself between life and death. But the parchment held more, a final, chilling line. To break the tethered bond, the living must give freely of life, or else face the consuming darkness. Lena's breath caught. Give freely of life. What did that mean? Blood? Spirit? Sacrifice? She hurried from the hall and turned down the side lanes toward the crumbling outskirts of the village. There was one other who might know more. Old Barrick, a woodsman who had known Brenna in younger days, and who had whispered once of strange things seen in the deep forest. Barrick lived alone now, a hermit by choice. His hut stood crooked beneath ancient oaks, gnarled roots twisting through the earth. Lena knocked upon the splintered door until at last the old man emerged, gray-bearded and sharp-eyed. "What brings you here, child of Brenna's house?" he asked, wary. "I need to know," Lena begged. "About the pact she made. About the spirit she angered." Barrick frowned, then sighed, shaking his head. "Foolish woman. I told her not to meddle. She thought herself clever, seeking favors from the green spirits, from old things beneath the roots." Lena's hands trembled. "What did she do?" Barrick leaned on his staff. "She sought a pact of life beyond death. Promised offerings, blood, service. But she cheated the terms. The spirit cursed her for it, bound her between worlds. And now, it reaches through her." Lena swallowed hard. "Can it be undone?" The old man's gaze was grim. "At great cost. The spirit demands what was promised. Life freely given from the living bloodline. That is you, girl. You bound by the washing of the body." Her heart twisted. "If I refuse? Then the curse will take you piece by piece. And worse, should it awaken fully, the spirit's door will open wide." Lena stood rooted, breathless with fear. She had found her answers, and they were worse than she had feared. To break the curse would demand sacrifice. Her life, or her soul. And there was no one left to face it but her. The sixth night approached with a dread that seemed to seep into Lena's very bones. The house was no longer simply cold or silent. It felt wrong, as if the air itself was strained beneath some unseen weight. Even the old timbers seemed to shiver beneath her feet. All day her mind had churned. The ancient writings, Barrack's grim warning, Mags's teachings. Pieces of a puzzle whose full shape she could now see. A pact with an old forest spirit. A curse incomplete, bound to her through touch and ritual. And only one way to sever it: life given freely, strength of will, sacrifice of self. If she faltered, the darkness waiting just beyond the veil would claim her. And perhaps more. That night Mags came one last time. "You are ready," the old healer said softly, placing a fresh iron charm around Lena's throat, then drawing protective sigils along her wrists and brow. "But this is your fight. No one can stand in your place." Lena nodded, voice steady despite her pounding heart. "I will face her." Mags held her gaze. "It will test more than your body, child. It will test your spirit, your fears, your wounds. Hold fast to your heart. Hold fast to who you are." With that, Mags left her to the night. As darkness fell, Lena sealed the house. Every shutter was barred, every door locked. The iron ring lay around the bed. The air shimmered faintly with the magic of wards, but they would not hold forever. The corpse on the bed had changed. Its breathing was louder now, rasping through slack lips. The limbs twitched beneath the shift. The skin, once pale and still, now seemed to thrum with faint pulses of warmth. And worst of all, its eyes. The milky orbs had opened fully. They watched her now, unblinking. Lena drew her chair close, iron dagger in hand, and whispered beneath her breath, "I will not run. I will not fall." The hours passed. Midnight came. The air grew heavier, thick with unseen pressure. The candle flames guttered low. Then the corpse stirred. A sudden jerk of the limbs. A deep, rattling breath. And then the voice, hollow, broken, but strong. "Leone." Lena rose, heart hammering. "I am here." The corpse sat up, unnatural, slow, stiff. The iron ring hissed faintly, but the pull of the curse was stronger now. "Bound?" the voice rasped. "Through you, life must feed." "No," Lena said firmly. "Not through me." The thing's head turned, milky eyes gleaming. "Too late, you gave blood, touch, bound." Lena swallowed. "And I will give what I choose. Not what you take." The corpse trembled. The air thickened. The shadows along the walls writhed, and in them faint shapes seemed to move, tall, thin, wrong. The spirits watching from beyond. A voice not of Brenna but of something deeper whispered in Lena's mind. "Flee, too weak, give in." Lena clenched the iron dagger, forcing her breath steady. "No," she whispered aloud. "I will face you." She stepped inside the iron circle. The corpse shuddered violently. The tether between them tightened. Lena felt the pull like hooks sinking into her chest, dragging at her very soul. Visions swam before her eyes. Her mother's death, her father's hollow grief, her years of cruelty beneath Brenna's roof. Her own fears, small, weak, unloved. The curse fed on them, coiled around them. "Give in," the voice urged. "Yield. Rest." Tears pricked her eyes, but she stood firm. "I am more than my pain," she whispered. "I am more than your curse." The air crackled with unseen force. The corpse lunged forward, lips parting in a ghastly scream. "Life. Mine." The tether pulled harder. Lena gasped as her vision blurred. In that moment she understood. Only her will, her heart, her choice could sever the bond. With a cry from deep within, she drew the dagger across her palm, a gift freely given, and flung the blood into the circle. "For the life I choose, not yours," she shouted. The air split with a shriek. The tether snapped. The corpse reeled, convulsing violently. The shadows writhed madly, then burst apart in a blast of cold wind. A final wail tore from the thing on the bed. "No." Then all fell still. The corpse collapsed, truly lifeless at last. The air lightened. The unseen watchers faded. Lena staggered, breathless but whole. She had faced the darkness and won. The curse was broken. And dawn was near. The gray light of dawn seeped through the cracked shutters, cold and thin, cutting through the long shadow of the night. The house stood still once more. The oppressive weight that had hung in the air was gone, lifted as if some great storm had passed and left a hollow, ringing calm in its wake. Lena sat slumped beside the bed, her breath shallow, her limbs trembling with exhaustion. Blood from the cut in her palm had dried dark against her skin. The iron dagger lay fallen to the floor. Her head ached, her body screamed for rest, but a deeper weariness filled her, the weight of everything that had passed. On the bed, Brenna's corpse was no longer a thing of restless half-life. The skin had gone pale and cold. The shallow breathing was gone. The eyes, once gleaming faintly with cursed hunger, were closed at last. The unnatural warmth had faded, leaving behind only the brittle stillness of true death. It was over. Lena's chest tightened. Tears she had not let fall during the long battle now burned hot in her eyes. She let them come, slow and silent. The curse was broken, yes. But she had faced the thing alone, without comfort or aid. She had looked into a darkness older than memory and had given of herself to drive it back. She had survived. But she was no longer the girl who had scrubbed floors beneath her stepmother's cruel hand. That innocence was gone. The light grew stronger with the rising sun. As it did, the iron wards placed around the room shimmered faintly, then dimmed. The bond had been severed. The battle was done. But the village would soon wake, and with morning would come questions. Lena rose slowly, unsteady, and unbarred the door. Her legs wobbled beneath her, but she forced herself into the street. The morning mist curled around her ankles as she made her way to Mags's cottage. Before she could knock, the door opened. The old healer stood waiting, her sharp gaze softening as she saw Lena's pale, drawn face. "You did it," Mags said gently. "I felt the change in the air." Lena nodded once, her voice too raw for words. Mags drew her inside and sat her by the hearth, pressing a warm cup into her hands. She examined the cut on Lena's palm, nodding approvingly. "You understood what was needed," the healer said. "You gave freely by your own will. That is what broke the tether." Lena managed a hoarse whisper. "It was hard." Mags's expression turned grave. "I do not doubt it. To face such a curse alone, with only your spirit as shield, few could have done so." Word of what had happened spread swiftly that morning. By midday, villagers gathered in hushed groups outside the house. Some had scoffed at Lena's tale when first she'd spoken of the breathing corpse. Others had called her mad or cursed. Now they stood uneasy, shifting from foot to foot, eyes darting toward the shuttered windows. When at last Mags led Lena back to the house, a small crowd followed at a distance. They watched as the old healer entered first and then emerged minutes later, her voice ringing clear. "The curse is broken. Brenna is dead. The girl has saved not only her own life, but all of yours." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, of awe, of shame. Those who had doubted her lowered their gazes. Widow Merrick, who had once dismissed Lena's plea, now stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "Child, forgive us. We knew nothing of this evil." Lena, her voice still ragged, simply nodded. One by one, others came, some with whispered apologies, some with offerings of bread or broth, others with bowed heads, silent in their guilt. Mags stood beside her, voice firm. "Let it be known, this girl faced what none of you dared. Let none call her weak again." As the sun rose higher, the crowd dispersed, chastened. But word would spread. In time, the tale of Lena's courage would be told and retold, how she had stood alone against dark magic, how she had broken the curse that might have consumed them all. But for now, Lena sought only rest. Back in Mags's cottage, she lay upon a cot, the warmth of the hearth soothing her worn body. The healer sat nearby, watching over her with a small, rare smile. "You have done more than any could ask," Mags said softly. "You have faced the darkness and found your strength." Lena's eyes fluttered shut. For the first time in days, true sleep claimed her. And with it came peace, the dawn of truth and the promise of a new beginning. Weeks passed. The heaviness that had long gripped the village began to lift, as if some unseen veil had been drawn away. The tale of Lena's ordeal spread quietly from house to house, spoken first in whispers, then with growing reverence. People who had once dismissed her as foolish or weak now crossed the road to offer solemn nods or soft words of gratitude. It was not pity that filled their eyes now, but something closer to respect. Lena, though, was slow to return to the world. The battle with the curse had left her changed, not just in body, though she was thinner now, her cheeks pale, but in spirit. Where once she had been a timid shadow in her stepmother's house, careful not to draw notice, now there was a steadiness in her gaze, a quiet strength in her step. She spent many days in Mags's cottage, regaining her strength. The old healer watched over her, offering no false comforts but plenty of warm meals and patient words. "You have faced something few would survive," Mags told her one crisp morning as they gathered herbs. "You should be proud." Lena managed a faint smile. "I did not feel brave." "No one does," Mags replied. "Bravery isn't feeling no fear, it's standing in spite of it." Slowly life began to settle. Mags had long needed an apprentice, and after some gentle urging, Lena accepted the role. There was much to learn, about healing herbs, old charms, the hidden ways of the land. But she found comfort in the work, in the rhythm of the days. Gone were the days of scrubbing Brenna's floors, of cowering beneath cruel eyes. The house that had once been her prison stood empty now, shuttered and abandoned. No one wished to live there, not after what had passed. Lena did not mourn its loss. She had no need of that place anymore. Her life was her own now, shaped by her own hands. And yet, some nights, especially as the air grew cold and the seasons began to turn, memories would rise unbidden. The pale eyes, the hollow voice, the awful pull of the tether between her and the cursed corpse. One night, as autumn leaves fell thick upon the earth, Lena sat before Mags's hearth and spoke the thought that had grown quietly within her. "There should be a way to remember," she said softly. "Not just for me, but so others never forget. What darkness was invited here. What we faced." Mags looked at her with approval. Wise words. Such things must be remembered, or they return. And so, on the anniversary of the curse's breaking, Lena prepared. She wove a lantern from twisted vines and thin branches, its frame light but strong. Within it she set a small glass jar, filled with oil scented with rowan and yarrow, herbs of protection. At twilight she carried the lantern to the edge of the dark forest, the place where Brenna had once sought forbidden power. There, beneath the towering oaks, Lena knelt. She spoke softly, not to the trees, not to spirits, but to the memory of what had been. For what was faced, for what was broken. Let this light stand as warning, and as triumph. She lit the lantern and set it upon a tall stone. The soft, golden glow shimmered through the gathering dark, a steady flame against the shadows. Villagers who passed that way in later days would see it and whisper, "That is Lena's light." Each year on that same night she would return. No longer out of fear, but in strength. To honor what had been endured. To remind the village that darkness could be faced, and that hope could endure. And beneath that steady flame, Lena's new life unfolded. Stronger, wiser, shaped not by the cruelties of the past, but by the courage found within her own heart.